The Guardians, Path of Ascension, by Bruce R.F. Chapter 2, Guardians. The blackened sky over Clearwater Beach is alive with vibrant flickers of whirling flames, from fire eaters, spinners, and twirlers alike, while the air is ahum with a gentle tune and the beat of the drums, and chanters speaking in tongues. There are showboaters walking on coals to demonstrate their faith, and benders pressing iron rods between one another in a display of strength. Most of it is charismatic performance art to tame the masses, and distract from the real goings-on. Arriving fashionably late, Seldin is pleased to see his friends are already here. Dean, the stocky bearded one, with obvious signs of the Irishman in him, is off to the side, speaking with some hooded figure in a black cloak. Everyone goes goth these days, Seldin thinks to himself, while looking around the area to see who else is here. There's Teresa, the leader of the local sorcery group, in the middle drumming with Jasra, while Simon is off talking shop with Aris, the average figure with long white hair, also darkly dressed, though in the finest of English attire. There are other friends and acquaintances here too, like Neil Byer, the tall one with dark fluffy hair, glasses, and a birthmark on his neck that resembles a permanent hickey. And then there is Emma Rowan, the girl Neil always flirts with, yet never seems to date. Seldin greets them too as he walks by, heading over to see Dean, who he meets with a firm handshake. "Evening, Dean," he says. "Why, Si, great party," he replies. "Who is that?" Seldin looks past, trying to get a better glimpse of the fellow.
"Oh, him,"
Dean emphasizes with a playful grunt. "Just an hombre," he says. To that, Seldin lets out a semi-laugh. "Still practicing your Spanish?" he asks. "You know it? Haha. Actually, he's an old friend. We go way back. So, what's new with you?" Dean asks. Making a circular gesture with his hand, Seldin replies, "As soon as I round everyone up, I'll fill you in." Stepping away, he turns, making his way to the center of the circle, toward the slouching figure hunched over his own knees, while sitting on a log in front of the bonfire. "Hey, Lee, what are you looking so glum about?" Seldin asks him. Leon glances upward at him.
"It's my stepfather, Ryan. He insisted on coming out here tonight to meet all of my funny friends, particularly you. He thinks you're a bad influence and wants to have words with you." Leon rolls his eyes, before pointing to the buffoon dressed like a pirate, out watching the performers. "Watch out for him, Si. He practices magic. I can't sense his power, but you always said spellcasters were hard to read," he warns.
Seldin nods, looking over at him and not getting much of a sense of him either. "I'll avoid him for now. I wouldn't want to make things more complicated for you at home, although I am curious as why you're so interested in me now. I mean, I've known you for over a year," Seldin says.
"Yeah, he's an off-again, on-again role model my mother picked out. He's not around often, but when he is, it's a total hell," he says.
"Sorry," Seldin says.
"On the bright side, I think I'm getting better,"
Leon says, while telekinetically writing his name in the sand. Seldin smiles with a hint of pride for his younger friend. "A wide stream is easy. You're just pushing particles out of the way. Try focusing on something more solid," he suggests, ignoring the glaring eyes of Teresa aimed their way.
"I've been practicing with the needle in the jar like you said, but getting through the glass is a pain,"
Leon says. "It's an insulator. That's why it's good practice. But now that you're moving stuff, you should start lifting heavier things. Weight's help. Here." Seldin tosses a coin in the sand between Leon's feet. "Try that." Leon exhales, getting ready. Working his breathing, a sense of pressure then moves from his lower abdomen through the tips of his fingers. The sand around the nickel dances with sporadic puffs as he points, narrowing his focus.
"Ugh,"
he lets out a soft grunt. "You're almost there," Seldin says, watching the coin slowly lift to its edge, as if caught in a weak magnetic field.
"Ugh,"
Leon huffs, dropping his connection, and the coin falls flat. "Not bad," Seldin congrats, when he catches the motion of Simon's hand. "Hey, I'll be right back," he tells him, before walking off to have a chat with his best friend. The sound of the drums picks up as the level of theatricality increases on the beach. Fire dancers twirl their flaming poles, breathers spit their flames, and some of those who are skilled in sorcery as well as the martial arts begin to display their techniques in a friendly show of combat. Seldin looks around, stopping for a moment. He can't help but observe the warrior within calling him to study the movements of a potential enemy, in this case, Leon's stepfather, Ryan, who is squaring off with Neil. Looking back, Seldin then continues towards Simon. "How's the experiment going?" Seldin asks as he approaches. Simon glances his way, offering a subtle smirk of amusement as he too watches the free source of entertainment. "Pretty good, actually. You were right. Spellcasters average around 100 joules, he says. Seldin shrugs with a bit of a face. That's not so surprising, considering they don't use their own power. The body consumes about that much energy a day just living, he comments. Simon then leans his way. Yeah. You know how everyone's aura feels different? He inquires. Seldin nods. Mm-hmm. Well, based on these scans, everybody's energy vibrates at a different frequency, he claims. That certainly explains a lot, Seldin notes. Yeah, but check this out. Simon removes his goggles, holding them out so both of them can see as he points to Leon. I noticed this earlier. Leon's energy vibrates at the exact same frequency as the Earth's magnetic field. Seldin looks, while comparing his senses to Simon's readings. You're right, he responds. The curiosity occupies his mind before Simon interrupts. Your field, he says, turning to face Seldin, changes based on whomever you're talking to. Like, it attunes to them. For real? Seldin questions. Simon nods. I was watching when you said hi to Dean. Your signal changed to match his. The same thing happened when you went over to Leon. It must be subconscious if you didn't notice, he says. Seldin shakes his head. No, I didn't. Guardian of life, Simon confirms, and Seldin pauses in thought. What about yours? He asks. Mine has an affinity for the devices I interact with. It makes sense when you think about it. I haven't been able to figure out everybody, though. Dean's energy seems to match the environment, but the signal fades in and out. Jasra's, on the other hand, is stable, yet I can't pin down the frequency. And Aris, he points. Wait, go back to her, Seldin instructs as he looks through the lenses, while feeling her energy push back against his own. There's almost like a pulse to it. 1 Mississippi. 2 misses. His eyes widen as he looks to Simon. Let me see your watch, he says before looking back between it and Jasra. 1 second intervals, almost as if synchronized with time, Simon comments aloud. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? He looks to Seldin, who makes a face of intrigue. With her gift of foresight? He smiles with a nodding gesture toward the drum circle. Have you said anything? Seldin asks. To Jazzy? No. I didn't want to steal your thunder. But you know her. She's been dropping hints all day. Simon quietly replies, before the two of them take their seats, amidst a group of their closest friends. Okay. Seldin hesitates in the moment, thinking of what he's going to say. It's something he hasn't told anyone, other than his best friend. Thank you all for coming. I've asked you here today, in this state of holy matrimony, Simon teases in a sarcastic tone. The others snicker, as does Seldin, before glaring back at Simon, while waiting for the chatter to cease. We can all tap into the Aether, wield it in our own ways. 5 years ago, we would have said it was impossible, yet here we are, capable of doing what only a select few have ever accomplished, and what so many others refuse to believe, even the spellcasters. His eyes shift to Teresa, who looks away with a disapproving sigh. Lately, I've had this drive to push myself, like I've never done before. I can't help the feeling that this is just the tip of the iceberg. He looks down with a heavy breath. For all of us. Go on, Soy, Dean ushers with a supportive nod, just as Jasra's hand reaches his back. Her long auburn hair and emerald eyes catch Seldin as his gaze pans the group. I believe we're meant for more, and I'm going to train. You should too, he says. Train for what? Leon asks. To be guardians, Seldin says firmly, his eyes reaching each of them. I had the same thought, Simon tells them. Me too, Jasra adds. What kind of guardians? Leon asks. Seldin looks to him. I have a feeling you may already know, he answers, then points to himself. Life. His eyes then move to Simon. Technology, Simon says, with a glance to Jasra, who gazes down for a second while searching inward. Time. Lee? Seldin looks to him, but Leon hesitates just as Ryan and Neil make their way over, while carrying on amongst themselves. You're pretty good, Ryan comments on the young man's ability as the two catch wind of the other group's conversation. Sai, how come you didn't wait for me? Neil asks, with only a slight amount of displeasure in his tone. You don't practice Aether. I didn't think you'd mind, he answers. So you're Sai, Ryan looks down at him, sitting there on the log. I am, he replies. You're the one filling my boy's head with all this Aether nonsense, huh? He scowls with a mocking tone. It's only nonsense to the closed-minded, Seldin replies. Ryan laughs with a hint of arrogance. At least sorcery works when you use it, he taunts. Seldin just shakes his head. Well, I'm sorry that it's more complicated than reciting a few rhymes. I'm chanting my words harder than you, Potter, he mocks with a squinty face, while twirling his finger like a wand in his direction, and some of the other sorcerers take offense, including Neil, Elma, and Teresa. "Why don't you put your money where your mouth is, boy?" Ryan challenges. Seldin breaks eye contact, gazing amongst his group. He doesn't want to stir up trouble for Leon, yet he really wants to accept. The others return his stare, specifically Aris and Dean, who have a look of approval in their eyes. Leon, on the other hand, doesn't seem too thrilled. "Lee, it's up to you," Seldin says. Ryan shrugs, making a gesture out of frustration. "Oh, come on, you're just afraid to lose," he shouts. "Nope, I'm afraid to win," he retorts. "Go for it," Leon permits, at the sound of his stepdad's annoying voice. Seldin opens his hand, while focusing energy through himself, and as his fingers fan out from his palm, they feel hot, as the pressure builds within them, until a bluish-white arc of light dances between the tips, crackling and popping the air with an electrifying hum. Ryan backs away. "What the?" he gawks in disbelief. "I don't need spells to use energy. None of us do," Seldin says, drawing the power back in, before dismissively averting his gaze, facing his friends once again. Ryan shakes his head, turning away. "You're lucky I didn't kick your ass," he says, with Neil following behind. Moments later, Elma runs to catch up. "I wish you would have fought him. He acts like my dad," Leon scowls. "The best fights are the ones we don't have to be in," Seldin comments, while discreetly rubbing the still-present singe from his fingers. Dean and Aris glance between one another at that, before Teresa turns to Seldin. "Why do you hate sorcerers so much?" she asks. Seldin sighs. I don't. I just can't understand worshipping a god that I've never seen for favors that might cost my soul," he answers. Teresa shakes her head at that notion. "But Aether is so much harder," she replies. Aether requires a disciplined mind and a honed body to handle its forces. The trade-off is, the energy is mine, plus it exists in everything, even the spells you cast. Personally, I like skipping the middleman. "Will you be ready when that god comes for a threefold payment?" he asks, and Teresa scoffs at him, before walking away as well. "What's with her?" Seldin asks. Jasra flicks her eyes his way. "You're being a jerk," she comments. "So we're all going to be guardians then?" Leon asks. "If you want to be, but you'll have to work at it," Seldin says. "Well, I'm in," Jasra says. "Me too," says Simon. "And me," Dean smiles. Right then, Aris stands. "I'll practice." His muddled accent sounds thick and hoarse. "But I won't be a guardian," the white-haired man says, as he walks off toward the shoreline. "Should we?" Leon asks. "I got it." Dean follows. Simon then looks to Leon. "So how goes practice?" he asks. "Ask my teacher." Leon nods to Seldin. "Oh, right. Well then, this should be easy." Simon smirks. "Wanna go?" Leon smiles at the chance to spar with Simon. The two of them then move out a distance before taking their stances. Seldin then leans close to Jasra. There's something odd about Teresa's aura, almost like there's two signals. "Have you noticed?" he asks. Jasra just rolls her eyes at him. "She's pregnant, genius." "Wait, what? When did this happen? Who's the father?" he asks. She shrugs. "Don't know. Never met him. But don't worry. I still love you." Jasra smiles. Seldin shakes his head at her comment. "You already have a boyfriend," he teases. Jasra sighs before looking out at Simon as he spars with Leon. "Yes, I do." Off in the distance, Dean and Aris seem to be at an impasse as they stare out over the sea while listening to the roar of the waves crash onto the shore. Aris knows what's on the horizon, with Dean glaring at him from the corners of his eyes, and it's not the ocean. "What was that back there?" Dean questions Aris' attitude. "I will not be a guardian again," he answers Dean, who isn't pleased by that response. "Listen to me. This mission is impertinent," Dean says. Aris turns to face him. "The kid said I had a choice, and he outranks you." "He doesn't know that yet, and until then, I am your superior, and I say you play along," Dean instructs. "I almost lost my entire race the last time I took up that mantle. I will not do it again," he scorns. "So instead, you're going to just hide behind fear? That won't bring your people back," Dean says. "And Sai-Khan?" he questions him. "The guardian of life," Dean sighs as he thinks upon it. "At least with him awakened, we have a chance to rebuild and restore the balance of nature. But until the guardian of life is ready to mate the guardian of death, we have orders. Follow them," Dean says as he turns to walk back. "And what of the others?" Aris turns to question him. Dean stops, glancing downward for a moment before answering. "It was a fortunate happenstance that 5 guardians were reborn on Earth. Even so, our focus should be on the life guardian. As long as he's ready, The others would join him, he says.
Understood, Dean. I just hope you're right about him.
Not bad, Simon grunts, dodging out of Leon's front sweep before springing back into a half-lip kick that nearly cuts across his nose. Leon can feel the wind and sand splashing his face. Oof! He turns left, brushing away the grit. Before Leon can recover, Simon darts forward, then slides like a baseball player coming into home to scissor his opponent's legs. With a quick twist, Leon is on his back, and Simon kips to his feet, taking a low cat stance. There's hardly a sound when a pair of arms brace him from behind. Look at these pussies, Ryan says to Neil, while squeezing Simon. They think they can fight. This is called Bear Hugs a Tree, Ryan says to Simon. Leon attempts to scuttle to his feet when the instep of Neil's right foot greets the left side of his face. That's called the flutterby, Neil says, while turning in stance to face the struggling Simon, caught in Ryan's grasp. And this is called Rising Tiger Takes a Breath, Neil's knee rams his sternum. Simon collapses with a spit-spraying gasp. Where's that Aether wielder? Ryan taunts into his ear, before thrusting him to the ground with a push kick to the back. With them both in view, Ryan sets up with a hand forward. A pulse within, quick and easy, on your knees, you feel queasy, he chants. And suddenly Simon and Leon hunch forward, puking all over themselves. The beach sand sticks to them in their own mess. It's gross and humiliating. The boys are hot from fury and covered in nasty. Neil laughs, while stepping up to kick more sand at them. As the spell runs its course, Simon shakes himself with a sick and wipes his mouth. The shimmer of Ryan's wristwatch grabs his intrigue. Rolling to all fours, his eyes keep contact with Ryan's before he leaps angularly, driving his shoulder into Neil's gut, for he's closer and off to his right. The two of them struggle for a moment. Surprised by the sudden change in direction, Ryan arches forward to rush in. Right then, Leon casts his hands toward him in a sweeping motion, using the ether to shower his occasional father figure with a blinding plume of sand and vomit. Simon then takes Neil by the wrist, twists around and behind him, and bars his arm to his back, while forcing him to his knees. In that same moment he opens his mind to feel for that delicate charge of direct current circuitry and those ticking gears at a distance. It's like music to him, and only him. With his focus ready and his awareness inside that watch, he calls the ether there in a surge that overloads it. Bah! Ryan's body jolts at the paralyzing shock, and he grabs his wrist. Likewise, the strain on Neil's shoulder causes him to howl loudly as Simon increases the pressure on the joint, 1 Newton at a time. In the few seconds that transpired, Simon has gained control. The sounds of commotion and the yowling screams draw Seldin and the others over. Simon, that's enough! He exclaims. They started it, he says. That guy and this traitor ambushed us like a couple of cowards. Simon adds a quarter turn more to Neil's shoulder. Leon then gives his 2 cents. It's true, he shouts, and Neil's cries grow stronger with a popping sound in his arm. Seldin runs to Simon. Let him go! You're going to break it! He grapples with Simon's grip to get him to ease off. Dropping the hold, Simon then kicks Neil in the ribs before allowing the electricity to drain from Ryan's watch. Fine, Simon huffs. Take their side if you want to. He steps away. I just don't want people getting hurt, Seldin replies. Simon gestures to himself and Leon, still covered in bile. And this is okay? Getting jumped by spellcasters? Simon argues. Sighing, Seldin glances to Leon, then to Neil, and then Ryan. Nodding, he concedes to the situation. You're right. If it's a fight he wants, he readies himself. But Ryan shakes his head while peeling the watch from his wrist to rub at the burned skin. He then gets up, pushing past Seldin and the others, as he walks off without a word. Dean and Aris once again look between one another in the moment. He handled that well, Aris whispers, and Dean nods in agreement.